Buddhism is a world religion founded by the Buddha in ancient India. Buddhists seek wisdom, meaning, inner peace, and freedom from greed, hatred, and ignorance. Mutually sustaining life, a Buddhist call to a troubled world.
Do not dwell in the past. Do not wait for the future. And instead, concentrate the mind on the present moment.
Today, let's continue our discussion of the teaching of impermanence, the third mark of existence, but with a focus on living in the present. I would like to begin with a humorous exchange between an emperor and a Buddhist master. The emperor asked Master Guandao, "What happens to a man of awakening after death?" "How should I know?" replied Guandao. "Because you are a master," answered the emperor. "Yes, Your Majesty," said Guandao, "but not a dead one." As the master's answer indicates, Buddhism is focused primarily in this life. Of course, as a religion, Buddhism has teachings about life after death, as exemplified in a book well known in the West, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and a teaching on transmigration, which we discussed in our last show with Tibetan Lama Venerable Gonta. Also, there is the Pure Land teaching with its large following throughout China, Vietnam, Korea, and Japan. However, in these teachings as well, much of the instructions has to do with how to behave and think in this very life. As we focused on this life, we are asked, which of the three is most important? The past, the present, or the future? The teaching of impermanence encourages us to focus not just on this life, but also on the here and now, in the present. The meditation practices demonstrated earlier by various traditions all stress mindfulness or the ability to be in the present moment. As another example, I like to cite a popular line that I see quoted in many places, but for which the author is unknown. You may have already heard it. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow's some mystery. But this moment is a gift. That is why it's called a present. It's all too true that we cannot forget the past, since it is because of the past that we have the present. And we cannot ignore tomorrow, since we must often plan for and anticipate it. However, we often find ourselves unduly dwelling in the past or overly anticipating tomorrow so that we forget about what lies right in front of us. As the passage reminds us, yesterday is history and tomorrow remains unknown, but the present is real. Actually, life is none other than the present. And when we open our mind and heart to the present moment, we are able to see, hear, smell, taste, and feel many of the myriad manifestations of life and receive them as gifts. Traditional Buddhist practice encourages one to live in the present. One prime example is the way monks and nuns are trained to eat their meals. Allow me to share my experience of how I took my meals when I lived a life of a novice monk in Thailand many years ago. First of all, the monks only eat 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch. In the morning, we partake of the food that we have received during our neighborhood begging or alms collecting rounds. We place the bowl before us, then we look at the food carefully and take a morsel of food with our hand in a very deliberate manner. We try to feel the texture of the food with our fingers and then bring the food slowly to our mouth. After placing the food in our mouth, we chew very slowly and savor the food. Breakfast usually takes about half an hour, concentrating on the act of eating and nothing else. Consequently, I remember exactly what I was eating and felt satisfied both in mind and body. The practice of living in a moment also extended to other facets of monastic life, which are carried out with mindfulness. The one lesson I remember very well was when I was hanging my wet towel in a usual manner, like this. However, my master reprimanded me for not being mindful. He then showed me his way of hanging the towel, which was to do it backwards. I then asked him why he did it in such what seems to me to be a rather awkward and unusual way. He explained that his way makes us be much more mindful and be in the present. And I found that my teacher was right. What is the relationship between the truth of impermanence and being focused fully in the present? Well, when a person truly comes to understand the impermanent nature of life, he or she paradoxically comes to feel how precious the now really is and seeks to live each moment as deeply and fully as possible. To illustrate this point, I'd like to tell you about a remarkable contemporary Buddhist teacher, Dr. Yu-Tang Lin. He came from Taiwan to study chemistry in the United States and eventually earned a PhD in chemistry from the University of California at Berkeley. Soon after, he met a Buddhist teacher who impressed him immensely. He was so taken by the teacher and his teaching that he gave away all of his books on chemistry to concentrate on studying and practicing Buddhism. Of course, he gave up a potentially promising career in the field of chemistry. Without holding any professional position in any Buddhist institution, Dr. Lin has since dedicated his life to promoting Buddhism out of his own home through numerous publications and teachings to anyone interested. He enjoys his daily walks, especially the part that takes him through the nearby cemetery. I asked him why he enjoyed and found meaning in walking through a cemetery, for most people would find that a little odd. He answered that the cemetery put things in perspective. Life is ever-changing and is so unpredictable, and we never know what lies ahead. Therefore, his walks through the cemetery remind him of what is important and what is not. The following is a poem he wrote, perhaps written after one of his walks through the cemetery, which aptly expresses his outlook. Suddenly, I see that life could end at any moment. Once I realize that I am so close to death, I am instantly free in life. Why bother to criticize or fight with others? Let me just be pure in mind and enjoy living. For Dr. Lin, when he squarely faces the fact of impermanence, he feels, in actual fact, instantly free in life. His sense of freedom comes from realizing that in this world of shifting and changing conditions, he needs to be focused in the now and in what is truly important. In my view, to be focused in the present helps a person to be clear on what is important and what is not. What are the big things and what are the small things? A person comes to realize that certain things are not worth all the fuss. Dr. Lin realized that when he cannot and should not be hung up on the small things of life, as seen in the line in his poem. Why bother to criticize or fight with others? Nevertheless, to some degree or another, many of us get caught up in criticizing and fighting others. Sometimes the stakes are high and the issues are important, so we need to hold on to our ground and assert our position. However, many times, won't you agree that the issues are not worth getting all worked up over? For instance, I recall once in the office I was working in, my coworkers argued intensely over where to place the new copy machine. After a while, it turned into a battle of egos. It was quite ridiculous and a real waste of energy. And how often do we, as employees, criticize and complain about our boss? In that same office just mentioned, certain people complain all the time about our boss and the administration that he represented. Certainly, constructive criticism is needed, but these co-workers complain endlessly about things that could not be changed or about things in the company that were far from being as bad as they saw them. In fact, it dawned on me that their idle complaining was a common denominator that galvanized the group. Without it, they would have little else to talk about. I find that these examples of unnecessary arguments and complaining are prime examples of the small things, which Dr. Lin would not get caught up in. He would instead direct that energy more constructively, for instance, toward cultivating his mind. As he says in the poem, "Let me just be pure in mind and enjoy life." It is this awareness about impermanence and the urge to live fully in the present moment and with the implied sense of appreciation and inspiration that today's opening passage expresses. Do not dwell in the past. Do not wait for the future. And instead, concentrate the mind on the present moment. Well, we look forward to seeing you next time when Reverend Gonta, a Tibetan Lama, rejoins us to share his thoughts on meditation and show us a basic meditation posture. See you then, and have a great week.
We at Bukkyo Dendo Kyokai pursue peace and happiness for people around the world. We have published the Buddhist teachings into 41 languages and donated our publication to hotels and other facilities in 55 countries. We would like to share the Buddhist teachings with people around the world. That's our mission. Visit our website for more information.